What's up, world? Welcome back to Cancer Thoughts. It's your boy, Better Days here. Elon Musk and Don Lemon just had an explosive interview. Well, let me not even really call it explosive. It was kind of just more adversarial interview because a lot of people have kind of blown it out of proportion, in my opinion, as to how explosive it really was. I did think the interview started off actually pretty well. And like halfway through it became a little bit more adversarial because I think both people kind of knew at that point the interview wasn't going in a direction that they thought it was going to be going. And maybe just on the Elon part of it, because I think Elon came into the interview thinking something very different than what he actually got from Don Lemon. So
it is what it is.
I'm not going to necessarily call it explosive, but today we're going to be going over a little bit of the interview and some clips from the interview that I thought were pretty fascinating. But before we get into that, you guys already know what I'm about to ask you guys to do. I need you guys to hit that like and subscribe button for more content. I'm trying to make sure as many people find this channel as possible. The only way I'm gonna do that is with you guys' help. On this channel, you guys, if you've watched any of my previous videos, know how I feel about Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk is one of the most brilliant people who has ever walked the face of the earth, and I respect him very, very greatly. And although I respect him very greatly and I admire him very greatly for the work ethic that it takes for him to become and maintain his position as one of the wealthiest people in the world, I don't necessarily always think he is acting in the best interest of the public as he portrays himself on the internet, because
he says one thing and then he goes and does another.
And I'm really particularly talking about his Neuralink venture, because that is something that scares me in a way that I don't think it scares a lot of other people. And let me know in the comment section down below if I'm wrong, but something about it just doesn't really sit right with me, and I can't really put my finger on it.
Actually, I can.
But in terms of this interview, I don't want to digress too much into Neuralink and my conspiracy theory on that. But in terms of this interview, I thought this interview started out very, very well. Honestly, there were a couple of tough questions, but then as the interview kind of wore on and I watched it in its entirety, it kind of became very, very apparent to me that Don Lemon had nefarious reasons for even holding this interview in the first place, because some of the questions he asked, it's like, how do you go from here to there making this assertion about what Elon Musk said when Elon Musk just essentially told you what he felt, where you couldn't even you can't draw a straight line A to B conclusion from what he just said there, and you're kind of just like
grasping at straws.
Honestly, this entire interview to me was upsetting, not because it was as contentious as it was, but it was a missed opportunity on the Don Lemon part, because one, you just blew up an opportunity for yourself with one of the wealthiest people in the world who could have opened doors for you larger than anything that you could have previously had. That's number one. But you also missed an opportunity to actually have a very deep and insightful conversation. Instead, you pretty much stayed surface level with all of the talking points that you have kind of been regurgitating over the past, I don't know, however many years you worked for CNN. But it's just, it's wild to me how some of these people kind of just don't ever change. And one of the biggest issues I have, and I'm going to show you a couple of clips from the video. As a matter of fact, this first clip, Don Lemon essentially asking Elon Musk a question about ethnicity. I don't like calling it race, because I personally think there's only one race, and that's the human race. There are obviously a lot of different ethnic backgrounds and ethnicities within the human race, but when people call it race, I'm just like,
Give me a break.
no, that's just another demarcation line that people like to draw to try to make us seem like we're a lot more different than we are. But he essentially asked a question about ethnicity in this particular clip. And the biggest problem that I have, you know what, I'm going to play the clip first and then I'm going to kind of dissect it for you guys.
I agree with you with that. That's the ideal. But what the evidence shows is that that's not what's actually in practice.
I think we're doing better than anywhere else.
That's true. I agree with that. But that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean a lot to a whole lot of people who aren't able to take advantage of the opportunities that you were able to take advantage of, simply because the color of your skin.
What advantages did my color of my skin give me?
Well, there's an ease that you have in society that many people of color don't. You were able to come to this country voluntarily. There are many people who were not able to come to the country voluntarily. There are people who came here as slaves.
For me to come here.
And there is a legacy of slavery that still continues on. There's a legacy of racism that still continues on in this country. That's undeniable.
Well, if we keep talking about it nonstop, it will never go away. If we keep making that the central thing, it will never go away.
Why do you believe that?
I think I'm just making a simple statement of fact.
All right, first things first in this clip that bothered me a little bit. These people like Don Lemon and a lot of people, I would say, on the political left, even though he tried to make the assertion that he's not necessarily left in the video, is like, okay. A lot of these people, they have this insistence on talking about race and ethnicity and regurgitating it and bringing it up over and over. And the way Elon Musk answered that question to me was spot on. He essentially said, we need to move on from talking about ethnicity. He didn't say ethnicity. Obviously, he referred to it as race, but we need to move on as like a society from talking about ethnicity because it doesn't move the conversation forward. All it does is inflame people and get them tribal and get them fighting against each other in a way that isn't necessarily beneficial to anybody who is actually in one of these groups who is arguing, because all you're doing is continuing to
repeat the same shit over and over.
That's what Elon, to me, was articulating in that small clip, but Don Lemon wasn't necessarily getting. He was insisting that, one, Elon, who is South African, even though he's white, he's South African. The notion that you would say that, well, you benefit from being white and having white skin color, it's like,
he can't do anything about it right now.
What's your point exactly outside of drawing this line of demarcation and inflaming people and trying to virtue signal to the people that you think are your base, who are probably going to support you no matter what you do anyway, because they aren't necessarily thinking, they're just trying to be inflamed or whatever. It's just like, all he said was, we need to stop talking about ethnicity because it doesn't move the conversation forward. And you basically said, well, are you saying that black people are this, that, and the third? Are you saying these people are better than these? No, he made a very simple assertion. At one point, we were all slaves. So
you really want to play this game?
There's just this insistence of people on the left talking about ethnicity, sexual orientation, all of that. That's just like, yo,
how does that help us?
If you want to move on from this, perhaps you start by allowing it to disappear. You don't solve the problem by continuing to hammer away at it, because all you're doing is perpetuating the same exact thing. And for the people who are like, well, let's be in favor of this whole diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense, is like, no, that spits primarily in the face of a meritocratic system. And to say that, well, are you then saying that colored people aren't as smart or as intelligent?
That's not what he said.
Essentially, he's saying the exact thing that you think you're saying that you're not actually saying. The people who should have those jobs are the people who merit those jobs by their intelligence, not by anything like ethnicity, not by anything like sexual orientation or gender. It's just, let's let the best people for the job have the jobs.
It's that simple.
The second clip is something that's like, okay, you brought up drugs. Why were you bringing up drugs in an interview with one of the wealthiest, most successful people in the world? Were you trying to just make him look bad? It's like, okay.
So you got no drink, no smoke, no nothing. I mean, you smoke pot with Rogan.
I had one puff.
Yeah.
I think anyone who smokes pot can tell I don't know how to smoke pot.
But you've admitted that you have a ketamine prescription.
Yeah.
What's that for?
Well, I mean, it's pretty private to ask somebody about a medical prescription, you know. But I think it's something I'd say, like, there are times when I have sort of, I don't know, like a negative chemical state in my brain, like depression, I guess, you know, is or like depression that's not linked to any negative news, and then ketamine is helpful for getting one out of a negative frame of mind.
Well, listen,
so I in fact, I generally, obviously I'm not a doctor, but I would say if someone has depression issues, they should consider talking to their doctor about ketamine instead of SSRIs.
You guys notice here that Elon is just at this point just upset. He's like, all right, I only brought up that ketamine should be something that's used to get people out of, because it's beneficial for me to get people out of a depressed state, which is something that I imagine a lot of people go through. And especially if you're one of the most overworked people in the world, like Elon Musk is, being able to use a drug. And I personally, while I don't do drugs anymore and I stopped doing drugs, I do think there is a certain element to drugs. And obviously everything has to be used in moderation, and you probably should discuss this with a health provider, someone who actually knows what they're doing or whatever. But I think every single drug on this planet was put on this planet for a reason, and they do something chemically in us that induces a specific outcome for us. And I do think there is a beneficial element to the use of drugs in certain people, especially if you talk about like psychedelics and the effect that they have on creativity. If you talk about ketamine and the effects that it has on your emotional state, what's the problem with using a little something if you're not obviously a drug addict and doing doing that. But what Don Lemon essentially was trying to paint the picture of here was that Elon Musk, one of the smartest people in the world, is a drug addict, and the ability that he has or whatever is either as a consequence of his use of drugs, or his use of drugs is hindering his ability to do that. But in any way, none of the arguments that Don Lemon was making here was coherent at all.
Not even a little bit.
And I want to close off this video by showing you guys a couple of other clips, because I think Elon Musk was spitting straight fire. I don't know if he writes poetry or something, but he said a couple of phrases in this clip that I was just like, yo, this dude is speaking facts. Take a look.
No, I don't love censorship.
Then why are you asking?
I believe in moderation, but I don't believe in
censorship. Moderation is a propaganda word.
Then
for censorship.
how do you see your legacy, Elon? How do you see how people see you in the...
First of all, I say that if I died knowing that I did what was right, or did my best to do what was right, and even if in the history books they said I did wrong, I would still feel okay about that. I care about the reality of goodness, not the perception of it. I think we should view civilization as tenuous, as fragile.
I mean, the first one, him essentially saying that moderation is just another propaganda word for censorship, to me is spot on. I've been saying that for a very long time now. And it's just like, whenever you hear content moderation, or, you know, Facebook moderates this or Instagram moderates that, it's just, all you need to do is substitute the word moderation for censorship. All you want is censorship. And obviously, when people try to make the claim that, no, we just want right and wrong, it's like, well, who decides what right and wrong is? Do you want Mark Zuckerberg or whoever the fuck is at the head of these companies deciding what right and wrong is? And there is a certain small hypocritical element to this, and I'm gonna point that out with Elon as well, because one of the things that bothers me a little bit about the whole X platform is I think we all remember a little bit, and I think one of the reporters on the Twitter files actually came out and said this: Elon says some things but doesn't ever actually follow through on them. And I do think there's a certain hypocritical element to this, because what Elon talks about, which is freedom of speech but not freedom of reach thing, is like, to me, it's also a form of censorship in a way.
How, you ask?
If you're in a room, which he kind of likens Twitter to this, like town square or whatever, if you're in a room with, let's call it 100 people, and you scream out something, those entire 100 people hear you. What Twitter is, and what Elon has been claiming Twitter is it's a town square where, well, if you post this thing, you don't necessarily get shown to all those people, even though if you're in a town square and you yell something out, everybody in the room hears you, and whoever hears you in the room that agrees with you will gravitate towards you, and whoever doesn't will gravitate away from you. The whole idea that, oh, well, we're not necessarily stopping people from speaking, we're just not showing it to people, and they still have the freedom to speak, it's to me a little bit counterintuitive, and I don't want to get into that too much. But the whole him talking about censorship and moderation, and them kind of trying to use these nice words to essentially mask what they're trying to do, that is spot on. And then the second one that he says that is straight fire to me: I care about the realities of goodness, not the perception of it. And there are far too many people in the world, and I am someone who holds these values as well. There are far too many people in the world right now, and in society as a whole, that care more about looking good than actually doing good things. And that's something to me that I think is a very, very indicative factor of just how we're essentially, what it's, one, characterizes the political left in a way that I think doesn't characterize the right as much as, but it's also something in me that I think is very, very illuminating, and is a very, very primary thing to how we've gotten to where we've gotten to in our society today, is that a lot of people care about talking a good game and all of that, while not necessarily doing the actions that it requires to actually do good things. And a lot of people, and I think a lot of the people on the Bloomberg Index, which a lot of people use Forbes or whatever. I don't know why Forbes is uncredible to me. The only thing that's credible about Forbes is it adds Michael Bloomberg on it, which the Bloomberg Index doesn't, but I don't want to digress too much on that. A lot of people on the Bloomberg Index, these billionaires who kind of do this philanthropy work, it's like, stop it.
You don't give a fuck.
you're just trying to look good while you're also simultaneously doing evil. And obviously, a lot of people will say that Elon Musk is one of these billionaires as well who's on the Bloomberg Index, and you might be right. I'm not going to argue with you about the things that Elon Musk does with his money or doesn't do with his money, or what he donates to or doesn't donate to. It's just, to me, there's this concerted effort for a lot of people to look good while doing bad things, but then be trying to be praised for it, and then it'll be confused as to like, well, why don't people like me, and why do people think this, and why do people not think that? It's like,
shut the fuck up.
You own this massive company where the workforce and the working conditions of that company have been chronicled to be fucking terrible, but you're also trying to like say, let's donate like 100 million of this, which is a tiny drop in the bucket of your net worth, to try to make it look like you actually care about the world. Stop it. If you actually cared about the world, you want to start with your own house and cleaning up your own house and cleaning up the working conditions in your own company. But I don't want to digress too much there. I'm going to end this video by saying Elon Musk is one of the most fascinating people in the world, and I hope one day that I'll be able to even just meet him and shake his hand, because I really want to ask him the question of how he is doing all of this simultaneously. Because for him to be running Tesla, for him to be running SpaceX, for him to be running the Boring Company, for him to be running X now,
It's impossible.
there's not enough hours in the day seemingly for me to see how he can do all of these things concurrently. So I would one day hopefully shake his hand and just ask him a few questions, because I have a few questions that I would love to ask him. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Did you guys watch the entire Don Lemon and Elon Musk interview? What did you think about it? Did you think Elon Musk was in the wrong for some of his kind of retorts to some of the things that Don Lemon was asking? Did you think that, and subsequently, I think Don Lemon has started trying to call Elon Musk like a racist or something, which is nonsensical in my opinion. It's like, okay, what did you guys think about Don Lemon essentially nuking himself in the foot? And then subsequently, what did you guys think about Elon essentially pulling the offer that X had with Don Lemon off the table? Because honestly, I don't necessarily think it was a good look for Elon to do that, but I kind of understand it as well, because if those are the questions that Don Lemon is going to be asking, I'm not going to be paying somebody to be asking these nonsensical questions, which have already been asked a number of times before, but are now just, I'm going to be paying for them. It's just like, all right, that's nonsense. So let me know in the comments down below, guys, what you guys think about this whole situation as a whole. If you watched the entire interview, I really, really want to hear from you. I don't want to hear anybody who just watched a couple of clips. Stop it. Be quiet. I don't want to hear shit from you. As always, guys, thanks for joining me on this video. You guys could have been anywhere else in the world, but you chose to be here with me, and I really, really appreciate you. If you liked what you heard today, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you didn't like what you heard, thanks for watching the whole video. Consider leaving a comment in the comment section and telling me exactly what you disagreed with. Either way, thanks for joining me on this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.